Hi everyone, this is my first live, so welcome. Thank you for tuning in. If anyone is here watching, I'd love to hear where in the world you are. We're going to be exploring some topics around chronic illness and trauma. So come and join me and we will have a little chat. So I had a really interesting question come through a couple of weeks ago now. And, oh, hello, people are coming. Hi, everyone. I'm assuming, Nath, you don't want to be in my video. So, welcome. We are going to be having a little Q&A. I'm here live for however long, so welcome everyone that's joining. So first time I've gone live on Instagram, so ask questions. I have one specific question that someone asked me a few weeks ago that I wanted to explore because it's not a simple answer. So the question I had was, can you do a video on how to remove past memories, especially when triggered? Really, really interesting question, and I completely see where this question is coming from. No one likes being triggered. No one likes the stuff that it brings up. I get it. We've all been there. So let's talk about triggers, first of all. So if you imagine a trigger, like what actually is a trigger? The word trigger, not what triggers you, but what is a trigger? If you look at a weapon, it has a trigger on it, right? How big is that trigger compared to the rest of the weapon? It's quite big. Well, the weapon's quite big, the trigger's quite small. So when we're looking at triggers, and I don't know, let me know, have you ever been told or have you ever sought out to avoid triggers? I know this thing triggers me, I don't want to go there. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid that trigger. So let me know if that is you. I have definitely been in that situation before and it can be healthy. But let's go back to that idea of the weapon. What is a weapon? It is a mass of explosive energy. So when we pull the trigger, that is when the explosion happens. So really, the trigger is quite a small thing. But where is this big explosive energy coming from? It's in us. So one of my triggers, for example, is people coming into the house uninvited. One of the things I have worked through, I know what it links to. It's lack of consent, and it's someone coming into my personal space without consent. The fact that someone has come into my house is not that big a deal. That's the trigger. That's the small part of it. But the first time it happened, I was in floods of tears. I couldn't breathe. I was having such a somatic experience from someone coming into the porch and leaving a parcel and not ringing the doorbell. That was not a healthy response. So that was the weapon exploding. And we all have that within us. And this is where trauma can be so closely linked to chronic illnesses. Because when we don't have a healthy way to actually release some of that pent-up anger, then something like that happens. Someone comes in the house and we explode. So, and it also happens when we don't expect it to. So, which is even worse because, we're going about our day, something happens, bang, off goes our explosion. And then we have all of these heart palpitations, we can't breathe, we're sweating, we have such a big sympathetic reaction. And for anyone that's joined me on any of my workshops, I talk about the polyvagal theory a lot. So we get stuck in this fight or flight place, which is the centre of our polyvagal ladder. And there is info on my Instagram if you're not sure about that. So really, when we have all this urge of sympathetic energy, we need to do something with it. So when we are in that place, we need to move, we need to express the emotion if we are in a safe place to do so. I must admit, I have gone outside and shouted at delivery drivers that have come into the house, which is probably not the healthiest way to do it, but that was me expressing myself. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but something needed to come out. So when the urge is there, we can, if it's anger, for example, which is my example, we can punch a pillow, we can get a towel and we can smack something with it, we can push ourselves against a wall, we can just allow emotion to be here. If you're in a safe place where you can shout and scream and cry, scream into a pillow, make sure you've not got any like children or animals around you and you are safe to do that. But I can guarantee you will feel better afterwards. And how long do you think that period of intense emotion would last? Anyone got any ideas? Whether it's anger, if you're upset, if there's an emotion that is coming up, pop it in the comments. How long do you think that emotion takes to pass through? You'll ride up a wave and then you drop again. And yeah, I can see Beth's been watching my stories. 90 seconds. A few seconds, yeah. It really doesn't last that long. Yet we get so scared of actually feeling that stuff. The reason we get scared is often we are not co-regulated with. We haven't been given a space as children to go through that full wave and back down again. We've not been held. This will pass. You're okay. You are safe. I'm here with you. We have felt it coming up and we've gone, oh my God, there's something here, push it down. And every time we push it down, it has to go somewhere. I think I said this in workshop 1. And emotion is just energy in motion. As in quantum physics, we cannot disperse, we cannot delete. Let me say this clearly. In quantum physics, energy is not something that we can delete or get rid of. Energy just changes its form. So there is a certain amount of energy that there is in the world. It will change, but we can't just get rid of it. So when an emotion comes up, it won't just go. It quite literally has to physically go somewhere in your body, and you can let it out, you can cry, you can scream, you can smack a pillow, whatever the emotion is here. I'm using anger, which I also know is not a very familiar emotion for a lot of people with chronic illnesses. We have a lot of suppressed anger, myself included. So when we suppress that, we push it down, it goes somewhere. It gets stuck in our body. And then we have this heavy energy that is stuck. Yes, Beth, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Exactly, that was a clearer way of saying it. So it gets stuck in our body. That stuckness can then turn into that back pain that we can't understand why it's there. It can get stuck in our hips, it can get stuck anywhere and manifest as something that isn't comfortable. So would we rather use that energy to cause us pain and to suck energy, or would we rather use that energy for literally giving us energy? How many of us want more positive energy, more ability to go out walking and doing the things that you love doing in life? So when we are repressing emotions, we're just getting it stuck in our body. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what actually happens in the brain. So there's a part of the brain that is very central. It's called the hippocampus. And you might be able to remember this. Hippo, this has just come to me. Campus, so campus, we're a university campus. It's like a library. So the hippocampus is where our memories get stored. When we've experienced something traumatic, and I will talk about what trauma is in a minute, those memories haven't been efficiently stored in our hippocampus, in our brain. We have dissociated because of the traumatic thing that happened. So we'll go into that freeze response often. It is quite literally, the big T trauma happens when our life is threatened, or we feel that our life is threatened. That could be the delivery driver coming into my front door and I feel threatened. It can also be that is triggered a time when I have quite literally had my life threatened. So we learn to dissociate to keep us safe. And when we have dissociated, that memory, can anyone remember back in the 90s, I'm not going to say 80s because I wasn't alive then, our old VHS tapes, so the big, thick, clunky, black videotapes that we used to have. And do you remember that you had to rewind them? And how many times has like the tape come out of them? So if you imagine your traumatic memory is one of those VHS tapes and someone's like pulled all the tape out. So the tape's everywhere. There's no way of knowing which bit's which. You know, imagine you've got videos on there. Some are really nice memories, some are not so much. So what happens is all of those parts get stuck somewhere in the body. We dissociate. We then get triggered and part of that comes up. So we then go, oh, I'm not going to do that thing again because it's triggered me. Whereas in reality, what helps you heal and process this stuff, so we're not continually being hit by colds and illnesses and just one thing after another. How many of us can relate to, you know, there's a chronic illness, oh, I've lost my job and the landlord's kicked me out and I've got an illness and this has happened and that, and it's just quite literally one thing after another. So let's go back to our VHS tape. It's all been pulled out. So all of the memories are somatically stored in our body. So they're not a full memory in our brain. They are energy stuck in our body, which can be why if, I don't know, someone might come up behind you sometimes and it triggers you, or there'll be certain parts in your body that are either telling you they're painful or they are triggering in some way. It depends on what's happened and how your body processes it. How we can actually integrate and process these memories is we take that tape and we put it all back together. So we rewind the tape up so it's in nice order. And this is where integrating and working with the body is what's going to help us realign and integrate that traumatic memory. We can talk about it till the cows come home, but we're not actually integrating it. So when we are rewinding that video up, we then put that back into the hippocampus as a full integrated memory. So it doesn't mean we'll delete what happened, but we won't necessarily get so triggered by just random stuff that might take us back to that time. We have said, okay, this thing happened. It shouldn't have happened, whatever it might have been, if it has left a traumatic imprint on us. So we've put that back into our library. It's like we've taken a book out. All the pages are everywhere. We've put the pages back in the book, and we've put the book back in the library. We might look at it and go, I don't really like that book. I don't really want to take it out again, but I've been there, I've done it, I've dealt with it. Rather than, you know, you've ripped every page out of the book and you've scattered them all around your house, and then you can't walk anywhere without seeing, oh, there's a page from that book again. So we put it all back together. And this is where using the body, using the breath, integrating, and I talked about this in my last workshop, there is, when we talk about the vagus nerve, the connection between our brain and our body, there's a 20% journey from the brain to the body. So 20% of this information that goes up and down comes from the brain to the body. 80% of the information comes from the body to the brain. So if you imagine that road, that highway, that channel, and we spend all day up here thinking, telling stories, talking about stuff. I am great at talking. I'm one of these people. We have to bring the body in. We're missing out on 80% of all of this goodness. And this is where it can feel quite scary. Like, I went to a sound bath a couple of months ago, and I was feeling a bit off that day, and I can't remember what had happened, but there was some anger in me, there was some stuff, and I was like, okay, something's gonna come up, I think. But I felt safe with the people I was with. I was in a space I could co-regulate, so there was a lot of safety there. And I was very much in my little dorsal bubble at the end of it. During the sound bath, I was physically shaking, especially in my legs. So there was almost like the urge to run. But I understood what was happening, so I was just riding the wave and letting it out. When you think about some of this trauma that gets stuck in our body, we need to feel safe to be able to allow it to release. We can't just do shaking and expect it to go. We need to be in a certain environment. We need to have a certain level of understanding to let some of this stuff out. So any advice that I could offer you with this would be just to start tuning into what's here. And when emotion comes up, whatever it might be, can you give that emotion some space? So let's say there's like a lump in your throat when something's happened. Let's say your boss sends you an email saying, I need to talk to you. You get this lump in your throat. You might feel constricted. You might quite physically shrink. Can you hear my voice is lowering? All of these are somatic symptoms of something that has triggered you. Rather than avoiding that and being like, oh my God, my boss is such a whatever, let's get curious. So if there's a lump in your throat, is that because something needs to be said? Is there tension being held here that needs to come out? Do we need to step into our power a little bit? What happens when we just give that space? And we don't need to understand why. This is one of the things one of my clients always says to me. I don't need to know why, do I? But it's here. And this is, again, our logical brain coming in and trying to explain, oh, well, you feel like this because. And that part of us, thank you to that part, is just trying to keep us safe. It's evolution. It's just trying to keep us safe. So we don't need to say goodbye to that part or dislike it. We just need to allow it to be here. Curiosity over intellectualizing has really helped me. Yes. Let's just see what's here. We don't need to judge it. So let me know if you've got any questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about what trauma is in a sec, but how is this landing? Does anyone have any questions about anything I've said? Is this giving you any like aha moments? Let me know in the comments what this is bringing up. Really helpful analogy, it's making sense. A lot of suppressed anger is coming up for me, yeah. And especially, I'm going to generalise here, women and women who have chronic illness. And this is my story, my history. We don't get allowed to be angry. Men do to a certain extent, but in society, anger is very much a don't do it. And my personal experience of anger is I have only seen unhealthy, angry men being angry at me. So anger has always been like, don't go there. Anger equals hurt. Whereas a lot of the healing I've done now, I realise actually anger is a boundary. Anger is no. Quite literally, get out my house. You are not welcome here. That is where it's healthy, because you're crossing a boundary. It's pissed me off. Okay. That's the purpose of anger. And if you look at animals, like we've got 3 cats, and one of them, our boy Darwin, he will go up to the girls and he'll just flop on them. He will just sit on them, and Pearl, one of the girls, will then start hissing and growling. That's her getting angry, being like, why have you come and sat on me? You have a whole house. You're on me. Get off. So this is where anger is quite a healthy reaction, because she'll then hiss at him and then he goes, oh, okay, sorry, I'll move. He doesn't learn. But, you know, we're animals at the end of the day. So yes, anger is there for setting boundaries. And how are we with setting boundaries? Could we be better? And I'm going to say something else about boundaries. When we have poor boundaries with people around us and relationships, we also have poor boundaries in our immune system. So when we have poor boundaries with people, with social situations, with work, with whatever, we are also quite literally telling our bodies that we aren't caring enough about them, and let anything in. Just let it all in. All the infections, the colds going around, come on in. Whereas when we have those clear boundaries with people, this is what I will tolerate and this is what I will not tolerate, then we have a much healthier immune system. So all of this stuff is linked, and this is... Boundaries is another one I see with people with chronic illnesses a lot. And for those of you that don't know, I spent a lot of my 20s in a wheelchair or having to be reliant on a mobility scooter from having such bad ME, chronic fatigue. So I have been there. I have learnt the hard way, the long and hard way. And not dealing with our anger, suppressing our emotions, having poor boundaries. That was me. I would do anything for anyone, but nothing for myself. And then I got to the point where I could not do anything for anyone else because I hadn't looked after myself. And I just felt broken. A lot of resentment is coming up for the emotional invalidation, and I have been subjected to from my friends and family in the name of toxic positivity. Yes. And toxic positivity, I mean, there is a place to be positive, but acceptance is a hell of a lot better than everything's fine, it's all good. Because we're not accepting what is. We're not actually being positive, we're just pretending. And then we can pretend to do anything. The energy is different. So if people are asking, how are you? Maybe ask the question, do you actually want to know? Do I feel safe enough to share how I actually am? Or is it just a polite, how are you? And if so, if they offer, no, I actually want to know, can you then share, well, I'm actually having a really rough day. I'd like some hope, I'd like some inspiration, but I don't need to hear whatever toxic positivity spin there is on things, because exactly as you said, it can lead to resentment. And I did a podcast last year with Raylan, and one of the things that we talked about was how we communicate, and especially when we have chronic illnesses, the permission. So consent and permission worldwide, we all need it. Every single relationship that we have, permission and consent is really important. How many of us with chronic illnesses have had people come up to you and say, oh, what's wrong with you then? Oh, I have such and such. Oh, I know someone that had it. Have you tried this? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried these weird supplements that cost £100 a week? How many of us have had this? Okay, yeah, you just spoke about my experience. So one thing I try and demonstrate as much as I can is the permission, and try this with your families. Do you want me to listen or do you want advice? So when someone's coming to you with something, sometimes they just want to be heard. They just need to talk, and vice versa. When you need to just talk, can you say, look, I don't need any advice right now. I appreciate if you are wanting to give me some. Can you just listen, please? Again, that's a boundary. When people are coming at you with, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And we hear it all the time. People heal in different ways. Some days we just do not want to hear. And I'm going to do a little experiment now. So if you think of, for those of us that celebrate Christmas or birthdays or any kind of exchange of gifts, what is your favourite part of the exchange? Is it the giving of the gift or is it the receiving of the gift? Who likes giving more and who likes receiving? Which is the most excitable part of it? Giving and the response. Yeah. So I think most of us could probably agree it's in the giving of a gift. So we are quite literally giving someone the gift of our knowledge with permission when we ask them, can I share something with you? You're giving them that opportunity to check in with themselves and say, yeah, I would like to receive a gift. Whereas if we had, if we were given Christmas presents every day, despite what some of the songs say, I wish it could be Christmas every day, we'd get bored of it, we'd get fed up. If people are constantly throwing gifts at you, you're not going to appreciate it. So when someone is offering you a gift and you are able to receive it, and often, I'd say probably 9 times out of 10, when you say, would you like some advice? Would you like to hear something? Can I share something with you? Most people say yeah. And this is something me and my fiance demonstrate quite a lot between us. Some days we will just go, no, I do not want to hear another quote. I don't want to hear advice. Just leave me to be in my stuff right now. What I actually need is a hug or some space or whatever. And it's being okay to have those sorts of responses. This lack of emotional availability has led me actually not to share anything with anyone. It feels like talking to them just makes me feel worse. Yeah, and I'm here for you. I hear you. That's not a nice place to be in. So I wonder if that is something that you're resonating with some of this, if this might be giving some tips to go forward with how to communicate with people. And this is another good point. We need our support. We need people. We need to co-regulate. We can't do this on our own. We are social beings. Us as humans, we have only survived because we've survived with other people. It's a society that we live in that tells us we all need to be independent, we all need our own house, we all need our own washing machine, we all need our own lawnmower. This is the capitalist society that we live in, that we have to be so hyper independent. We need people. There's a reason that they put people in solitary confinement in prison to punish them. We cannot do this on our own. When we can healthily co-regulate with people, and I talk about this in some of my workshops, then that is a place where we can access healing. Because otherwise, we are quite literally in survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we cannot heal. So I'm glad this is resonating with some of you guys. Let me know if you've got any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit about what trauma is. And have a drink and look after my own nervous system. And thank you to those of you that are here. We've been going for 30 minutes. I told you I can chat. So, what is trauma? If you have any ideas what you think trauma is, pop it in the comments. How many types of trauma are there? What kinds of trauma are there? Is it just when something big and horrendous and life-threatening happens, or can it be something else? And how many of us actually think that we've been through trauma? If you haven't maybe been in an abusive relationship, you haven't lost someone very close to you, if you haven't experienced those types of big T traumas, doesn't mean you haven't experienced some form of trauma. So, and this doesn't mean to say, you know, most people have some degree of trauma of some kind. When we can acknowledge that and work with it, we don't have to play top trumps with trauma. Mine's worse than yours. If we've experienced it, trauma is essentially some kind of disruption to our nervous system. So where we haven't been co-regulated with, we haven't been able to feel safe, our life has felt threatened. It's some impact, disruption to our nervous system. So some of you might know I'm training with Gabor Mate at the moment. He talks a lot about trauma. So I think it was him that came up with this. Don't quote me on this. But big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma is probably what the stuff we think about that I've just mentioned. Abuse, death of family, accidents, big illnesses. I don't need to go into too much of the gross big stuff. That's the big T trauma. So I've definitely been through quite a few big T traumas in my life. My dad died when I was 13. I'm not going to go into everything else. That is definitely a big T trauma. A little t trauma is something that creates some kind of distress. Again, it's a break in, it's a disruption to the nervous system. So something like not being bonded with as a child. So for example, when I was born, my mum said that they took me away from her and put me at the other side of the room for 30 minutes. That might not necessarily seem like a trauma, but if you think of a newborn baby suddenly being taken from their mother and being left on their own, the world suddenly becomes a very scary place. So they're on their own, there's no one to soothe them, and that was my first ever experience of life. So hence why probably I've gone through a lot of the stuff that I have gone through. So other little t traumas can be things like prolonged stress, work stress, financial stress, anything that creates some form of distress to the body. Another thing that makes it, that can impact us and keep this trauma stuck, is the support that we had. So it's how well have we repaired that break. So when we've had any kind of relationship rupture, which is generally what some kind of trauma is, we can also have things like, you know, illnesses and accidents as well. When there's been some kind of wound, it's how is that wound cared for and looked after afterwards. So if you can imagine you've cut your arm and you just ignore it. It isn't allowed to be looked at. You don't clean it. You just pretend it's not there. You just get on with life. Distract yourself. Keep yourself busy. What do you think is going to happen to that cut on your arm if you just ignore it? You haven't cleaned it. It's probably going to get infected. Probably not going to heal very well. It's going to become bigger and more painful. Whereas if we go back to that cut on the arm, you go back to something traumatic, something that's been a rupture, something that's been a break in a relationship that's disrupted your nervous system. You've got that cut on your arm, and we care for it. We clean it every day. We change the dressing on it. We put the ointments on it. We look after it in the best way we can. We maybe stop using that arm for a while. We give it everything we can to help it heal. That event either won't turn into long-term trauma, long-term chronic illness, or it is much lesser than if we just carried on and ignored it. So when we've had something happen to us and no one's been there for us to process our emotions, we have learnt coping strategies, we have learnt to adapt, we have internalized that maybe we aren't loved, our feelings have no place, our feelings don't matter, we aren't enough, we're only seen when we are performing, that we are perfect. All of this stuff, all of these sort of protective personalities, as I call them, come from these events. So if any of this is resonating with you, let me know. You don't need to share what happened, but I'm hoping some of this is making a little bit of sense. So when something happens, and like I shared earlier, my dad died when I was 13. Unfortunately, what often happens when there's a death is that people don't know what to do and they're scared of saying the wrong thing, so they'll just ignore you. So one of the things that then impacted me was my friends left, and some of them actually started to bully me. So I've not only lost my dad at 13, I've then had all of this stuff happen from people at school. There wasn't support, and no wonder I got a chronic illness, because there wasn't a space that I could go to just say, whatever you're feeling, it's okay, it's welcome, it's allowed to be here. And thank you for that, Beth. Sorry I had to deal with that. Yeah, it wasn't nice, and I share this because I hope some of this might resonate with people, that it was inevitable. We can't take back what happened. It has happened, and you have survived it. And this is a big thing with recovery, is however big and scary the emotions might be, you got through that thing. You are still here. You can handle whatever's here because you got through that. And thank you for that. I do appreciate everyone commenting. I wonder if, is this resonating with anyone, that something has happened and no one's been there for you? And for me, I then turned into, I had to do everything for everyone else. I'm only seen, I'm only appreciated, I'm only loved when I am top of the class and I'm a straight A student and I am performing and I'm caring for other people and I'm putting my own needs at the bottom of the pile but making sure everyone else is okay. I was ridiculously generous with presents. I would spend all my money on giving things to people, being an overachiever. Yes, so much of this, and this comes from that wounded child that we all have in us that wasn't seen. And every time, these triggers come up, there's just a child in us that is desperately wanting to be seen and held and whatever else it needs. This is different for everyone. And this is all valid. You make me feel so validated. Yeah, this happens to all of us. Unfortunately, to one degree or the other, it is normal for us to feel this stuff. and I see this in my clients with chronic illnesses, that you might have heard of the sort of type A personality and the perfectionism, and we're controlling, and there are certain traits that we have. These aren't bad. These are protective personality types, and they're here to keep us safe. They have a purpose. Parts work has really helped me. Yeah, so Richard Schwartz has a modality, I think you'd call it, called IFS, Internal Family Systems. And he learnt this from doing a lot of family therapy, that you'd have, you know, a mum and dad and 2 kids, let's say, in a room, and he would notice the relationship between, I don't know, the mum and the daughter, that they would wind each other up. Whereas when you'd get one of them on their own, or you'd ask, well, what is it about this that's agitated you? There would be different conversations, different needs, and you might know this in your own family. You're different with certain people. Your needs aren't met with certain people. So we all have that within us. And this is where, if there's a part of you that, let's say, jumps in and says, you can't do this. What if this happens? What if it fails? That part of you has probably experienced when this has happened before, and you did the thing, you put yourself out there, it went wrong, or you might have embarrassed yourself, or something might have happened. That part is just coming up and going, I'm trying to keep you safe. What if this thing happens again? And then another part, often a higher self part, needs to come in and say, thank you. I can see that there's a fear here. What do you need to hear? What do you need to feel in order to not go away, but to maybe settle, maybe calm a little bit? I'm not trained in IFS. I have used it with some of the therapies and coaching that I have been in. I know Gabor Mate has had some conversations with Richard Schwartz as well. So I'm no expert in IFS, but I have an understanding, and it's powerful work. And what happens when there is something that we don't like and we push it away? You know, if you go up to someone that you live with and you put their hand against theirs and you push into them, they're going to push back. So we're trying to push that part away. That part's just coming in even stronger. Whereas when we can meet that part and say, what do you need? Then it can kind of just settle. It's been seen. It doesn't come up so big and scarily anymore. It's just there trying to protect us. So I'm hoping some of that's helpful. I've talked about trauma. Has anyone got any questions? We've been going for 45 minutes. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for. So if anyone has any questions about anything I've said, anything about how this is linked to chronic illness, let me know. Why are you here? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes just to let me know if there's any questions. And if anyone is interested in diving a little bit deeper into this, then I have various offerings. I have another workshop at the end of the month where we'll be looking at the how into some of this stuff. How can we heal from this? Some amazing tools to actually release some of this trapped trauma, to become aware of what's going on in our body a little bit more. So it's not just theory, it's actually embodied understanding. So my next workshop will be on the 28th of March, which is a Thursday, I think, at 6 p.m. UK time, so same time as now, and it's £20. So it's easy, cheap, great investment, tons and tons of information in there, and you can come pick my brains and get lots of information. So yeah, thank you, Beth. I'll be joining that workshop. The past 2 have honestly been so amazing and comforting. And for those of you that are here and saying that you feel validated, saying that you feel seen, that is part of healing. Is being in a space where you are seen as the whole of you. You're not just seen as the overachiever or the generous person or the carer. You are seen as your authentic self. We don't need to put a mask on. We don't need the face. We're just us. And another Gabor Mate quote theory, we will always choose attachment over authenticity. So attachment will keep us safe. When we're children, we quite literally have to suppress our own needs if we aren't met as authentic beings, because we would quite literally die if we didn't have that attachment. We cannot fend for ourselves. So we'll always choose attachment over authenticity. And the authenticity is us being able to show up as our full self and know that our needs will be met. We can advocate for our needs. Some people might not like it, but we know that that's okay, that we are safe, we are okay in ourselves. We're in that ventral connected place where we can just show up and be ourselves. So like, I jumped on FaceTime with my fiance earlier. I'm wearing my Barbie, I am Kenneth top, and he just starts laughing at me. But I'm like, you know what? I love colour. I love the Barbie movie. I'm turning up as me. And I'm comfortable to just show up as myself. So that's taken me a long time, mind you. But that is part of healing. I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the comments. Hello for everyone joining. I've seen a huge shift in my anxiety levels since practicing everything you've shared in there. Yes, and Beth, you've been doing amazing with a lot of this work. It's not just understanding what's going on in our heads and thinking positive or affirmations. That stuff can work, but working with the body, embodying stuff, working with somatics, that is the place where we can access healing. And if you think about it, when we have chronic illnesses, they're not chronic illnesses of the head. We know it's not all in your head. So when we are feeling stuck, feeling sick, whatever it is in our body, we have to go to the body. We can't heal from our head. I'm going through a lot of burnout and exhaustion after ignoring my body and pushing it for years. Anything that can help dissolve the pressure to perform. Yes. So I feel you. I see you. Burnout and exhaustion from ignoring your body. The first tip I would give anyone who's in this sort of situation is just to start tuning in and asking what your body is trying to tell you. Just listening. And that can quite simply be in the morning, do I fancy fruit and yoghurt this morning for breakfast? Do I want toast? What does your body say? And there will often be a slight pull to one. That's tuning into your intuition. Once you can start doing with simple stuff, it will grow. It will be at the point where, I don't know, you walk into a house that you're looking to buy and you just go, nope. Or certain people. So tuning into your intuition, listening to your body. So my best friend says I should like get this tattooed on me. She's like, oh, you're saying listen to your body again, Jeff. So just tuning in to what is here. And if it is uncomfortable, if there is pain, try not to run from it. Imagine it was someone that you love telling you that they were hurting. Would you shut the door and run off? Or would you go to them and say, what do you need? What's going on? What can I do? So go to that place with your pain, discomfort, just starting to listen. And I know that can be a lot at first. And in my opinion, I don't think you can recover fully from any of these chronic illnesses unless you have some kind of awareness and relationship of listening with your body. Because all you're going to do is just kick the can down the road. It will come up at some point. So in my own history, I ignored my body. I kept going. Something really stressful happened in work, and I just piled too much on myself, basically. You know, I have compassion for that side of me because I learned all this stuff. I was just trying to show up and perform and be loved, and that's not a bad thing that I was doing all of this. It was just what I knew at the time. And I remember being in work one day, and I tried to get up to go to the toilet, and I quite literally didn't have the energy to just get up and walk 10 steps to the toilet. And that was at the point where all of this emotion came up. I couldn't keep the lid on anymore. Like, if you think of like a Jack in the Box, or, you know, like a beach ball that you're trying to push underwater, there's only so long you can hold it there before whoosh, up it comes. And that was my moment in work. Couldn't go to the toilet. And I spent months and months off sick. It wasn't pleasant. So that really taught me to listen to my body. And I get to the point now where, like, I've spent the whole weekend. I was in London on Friday. I was in Bristol on Saturday and Sunday, socialising, seeing friends, travelling on the train a lot, walking around, doing a lot. I remember walking back to the train station with my mum last night, and I was just like, oh, I'm craving some quiet time. There's something in my body that's like, stop talking and just enjoy the walk. And I knew, like, the old me would have just sort of ignored that and carried on talking, because I don't want to seem rude, and I'm out with my mum and I don't see her that often, and off goes the story. But we just walked back quite comfortably. And it's little things like that. It doesn't have to be, you know, I'm listening to my body. It's telling me I'm burnt out. I'm quitting my job. It might be. But it can just be little things. So yeah, looking at it with compassion. And when your body is saying no, it's saying no for a reason. And when we ignore that enough times, like I did, it will hear that you're not listening. I need to show you to stop, to slow down. And unfortunately, that's when the fibromyalgia, the chronic fatigue, the rheumatoid arthritis, the long COVID, all the stuff comes in, and then our body is like, you didn't listen. Here I am. Here's the pain. Here's the fatigue. You have to listen now. So it doesn't have to be that way. And I have recovered. I've seen a lot of people recover. I see a lot of people who are kinder to themselves. I saw one client recently. She came to me in November, I think, in a wheelchair, able to take a couple of steps and having to be driven to see me. And she's now driving herself down. She's walking. She's doing amazing. So, and she's allowing emotions to be here. She's working with her body. She's listening. She's just being a lot more kinder and compassionate towards herself. So she's doing amazing. And this isn't just a one-off. This is one client. So mindset tool never worked for me. Last year when I learned about somatic practices and the nervous system regulation, it started making sense. It's helped so much. Amazing. Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that. And I know somatic work is becoming bigger and bigger. And I am here for that, because if we all got taught how to regulate our nervous systems at a young age, oh my God, the world would be a different place. We'd be in a much more compassionate, kind society. So listening to your nervous system, regulating, and I go into more detail on how to do some of this stuff in my workshops. So, like I said earlier, they're only £20. I do one a month. I'm also open to suggestions. I'm doing a series of 4. We've got the 3rd workshop at the end of the month on your nervous system. I will probably do one about boundaries, but if there's any other things that you would like to ask me, hear me talk about when it comes to chronic illness, trauma, recovery, nervous system regulation, any of this stuff, I'm all ears. Just drop me a message, slide into my DMs and say, could you talk about such and such? I might do some more Facebook Lives as well at some point. And yeah, it gets louder and louder. I'm so glad I listened. So yeah, that's what happens in the body. When we don't listen, it just gets louder. I'm still struggling with listening to my body. Yeah. It's new. And this is something that's nervous system related. Our nervous system, our body, will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. So we always go for what we know. So if we've always not listened to our body, listening to our body feels quite big and scary and unfamiliar, and therefore it will be dysregulating. So when we start signalling safety, and this is where some of the somatic nervous system regulation techniques come in, when we can, it's called titration, when we can do a little bit of the scary thing, a little bit of the listening, a little bit of the unfamiliar thing, we can learn to grow. So I shared this in a recent email about my love story, and you have to be able to receive and have the capacity to hold. When our capacity is like this and we want to be here, we can't just do this. We have to take small steps to integrate. And I have one of these, should have brought it up with me, like a breathing ball that opens and closes. So every time we open, every time we expand, there will be a contraction. But if you imagine we grow from here and we do this and we keep, can you see we're still pushing out? We're growing, but each time we grow, there's a little bit of a contraction. That is normal. So if you, like when I met my partner, for example, I was overwhelmed with like how amazing he is. And my nervous system was just like, there's something wrong with him. You can't receive this much love and adoration. There must be something wrong about him. But over time, I've realised I'm allowed to expand. But each time there's a contraction. So give yourself the time for that, rather than pretending that it won't happen. Just allow it to be here. Yes, and Peter Levine talks a lot about titration and pendulation and loads of amazing somatic work. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Peter Levine's. So we've been going for nearly an hour. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I think I will finish this off any minute. So any last comments, questions? Thank you all for being here as well. And I'm going to try and say your name. Anamika? Hopefully I pronounced that right. Thank you. Thank you for your kindness. I'm so glad I found you. Appreciate that. So just a little reminder that I am listening to you guys, and we're working on different levels of support so everyone can access some kind of help. So the easiest here is get on my mailing list. I send loads of helpful tips and advice on there. That's completely free. Drop me a message or have a look in my link tree or my link in bio if you want to join my mailing list. So loads of good stuff on there, loads of stuff on social media. I do a £20 workshop once a month. I will also have a self-guided course coming soon, or a self-paced course. So that will be like your foundation of how to start your healing. So a lot of the stuff we've been working about today, or talking about, how to start listening to your body, start tuning into those subtle signs, feeling safe, being able to go there, and practicing these techniques before you go off and go into like a movement practice, or go and do something bigger. This is like, let's build the foundation. If you think of building a house, you got to build the foundation before you build the house up. So it's called Energize. and it will be launching in a few weeks' time. So if you are interested, it will be probably about £250. Loads of really good content in there. So if you are interested, then send me a message and I can get the details to you. It will be on my mailing list as well. I've also got a couple of spaces for working with me one-to-one. So all an invitation. If that is something that you feel like you would like to do, then just drop me a message. We can book in for a chat. We can go through what it is you might need. I'm not going to try and upsell the most expensive thing to you. I will offer you what I feel is best for you after having a conversation with you. So yeah, if there's anything that you would like to work with me on, my inbox is open. So drop me a message, and thank you again for all being here. Really appreciate everyone joining. I think I will, if I can get the technology working, put this on record and post it on Instagram. But yeah, thank you for joining me live for my first Instagram live. Yay! I will see you soon, and I hope you've enjoyed this and enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care all. Bye!